Chapter 35 of 2 Blue Vortex. If I had to describe it in one word, it would be disturbing. Not because it was a bad chapter, but because almost everything that took place in it left me with a feeling of dread. Before we even start reading, we're shown the cover of Hidari. It's the second time he gets one and it looks just as good as his first one. Pretty cool, right? What's not cool is the title of the chapter accompanying the picture, Cute. If the cover pic had been someone like Eida, Himawari, or Sumire, the title would feel appropriate. But with Hidari, it feels anything but appropriate. It perfectly sets the stage for the events to come. The chapter starts off with Jura and Hidari reflecting on Mamushi's defeat, and Jura reminding us of how Mamushi's behavior was indeed an expression of his warped love for Eida, as disturbing as it was. Hidari responds by finally bringing up something that happened a while back, but was certainly a cause for concern regarding the other Shinju. When Jura went after Boruto in the Land of Wind, he had the chance to snatch both Ryu and Matsui's thorn bowls the way he had done Hidari's when he was first defeated. Instead, he completely ignored them and prioritized going after Boruto. Hidari, many chapters later, finally asked him why he had done that, going even further to ask him why he specifically chose to save him. Jura responds by implying that Hidari is his favorite of the Shinju family, saying that he felt sad at the thought of losing him rather than any of the others. I originally thought that he was just too focused on eliminating Boruto and would have abandoned any of the Shinju in that moment, even if it was Hidari instead of Matsui and Ryu. But no. It turns out that Jura specifically has a soft spot for Hidari, or to put this in a way that lines up with his research, he seems to have some form of love for Hidari. This makes the anticipated rematch between Sarada and Hidari all the more interesting. What happens if Hidari is defeated and Sasuke is finally brought back? How will Jura respond? Even Eida is caught off guard by Jura's revelation. And speaking of Eida, it's worth noting that she's finally okay with spying on them again via her Senrigan. For a while, she was too scared to spy on them in present time due to Mamushi being able to see her, despite her physical body not being there. Now that he's gone, she can now freely watch them without worry. I wondered if Jura would also be able to see her since all the Shinju not only come from him, but are also connected to him, but it seems like that's not the case. It looks like it was only Mamushi. Back in Konoha, we see Sarada walking out of what appears to be an optical shop. She seems to have new glasses, and as a result of that, her eyesight has been fixed. Hopefully she doesn't intend on using her Mangekyo Sharingan again though, not until she's found a solution to the blindness. I imagine the prescription glasses will only help for so long. Moving on, Boruto signals her to follow him outside the village, in a similar fashion to how he did to Mitsuki back when he ambushed him. Meanwhile, Koji is talking to Inojin via his toad, telling him that he's going to have to keep the toad on him at all times, ready to use his mind transmission jutsu as well as the formation at a moment's notice. With Ino having ditched them, Inojin's now the only person they can count on to do so. Glad to see the guy still relevant even after Mamushi's defeat. Transitioning over to Amado's lab, Kawaki arrives after being called over by Amado last chapter, suspiciously after Boruto had walked off the battlefield. He's greeted by Amado's toad, which I still find funny. There's something hilariously weird about seeing Amado use these robot toads the way Koji does. He shows Kawaki the ratio of his attack and defense, revealing that even after their agreement to give Kawaki a purely offensive upgrade, Amado still distributed some of Kawaki's power to defense. Shockingly, this is the reason Kawaki remained alive when he overheated against Mamushi. Seeing as Kawaki is a compatible vessel for Ishiki's karma, I didn't think using all of its power could harm him that much. I figured the power would only harm him once he started getting more of it beyond what already came with the karma. It could just be because he has mechanical parts, but that's still shocking to hear. Amado also reveals that by using his robot toads, he can adjust Kawaki's ratio of offense and defense remotely. Kawaki won't have to come see him at the lab for that. This helps to ensure Kawaki won't be put in any life-threatening danger from using his powers. It's a clever way for Amado to ensure Kawaki stays alive to be able to give Akabe his karma after eliminating the threats. What's interesting about the wording here is that unlike the last time we saw them discuss Kawaki giving Akabe a karma, Kawaki only mentioned the Shinju as being the obstacle that had to be removed first, rather than the Shinju, Code, and Boruto. I don't know if this was simply a translation issue, if it was an abbreviation by Kawaki, or if Kawaki and Amado had come to a compromise off-screen when they last discussed it. After all, we didn't see every second of that conversation, just the end result when Kawaki arrived powered up to help Boruto against Jura. It's possible some adjustments were made to the original plan. At the beginning of Boruto's manga in part 1, we see in the future fight of Kawaki versus Boruto, that Kawaki's telling Boruto he'll send them where he sent the 7th Hokage. We know now that he didn't actually harm Naruto, but instead trapped him in his pocket dimension. If the writers are still committed to the original Flash Forward, then this would mean that at some point before their big fight, Kawaki changed his mind about taking out Boruto. He instead decided to seal him away for what I'm guessing is forever. The dialogue between Kawaki and Amuro could be hinting towards that. Back to the Toads though. I'm not sure how much I would trust Amuro with being able to manage Kawaki's power distribution at will. I can definitely see him sabotaging Kawaki during a fight, purely out of paranoia that he's in danger. His main goal is his daughter. Everything else is irrelevant to him. After Kawaki and Amuro's meeting, the chapter goes back to Boruto and Sarada meeting outside of the village. After a brief greeting, Boruto starts off by saying he's glad Sarada can see again, but she responds by saying that her sight returning is pretty much temporary, likely because she knows she'll be using her Mangekyo Sharingan again. More interestingly though, she also mentions how her gradual loss of eyesight is nothing compared to Boruto's right eye, which he sacrificed in order to save her from Kawaki, back when he tried to take them both out at the end of part 1. Sarada never got to apologize to Boruto for that, and we see how much that had been bothering her for the 3 years between the incident and now. Back then, she hesitated to fight. When she stood between Boruto and Kawaki, she didn't even have her Sharingan activated. Not saying she could have beaten Kawaki, but at the very least, she could have made it so that Boruto didn't have to suddenly rescue her and lose his eye. So I can see why she blamed herself for it. Boruto brushes it off though, telling her that with everything that was happening, his eye was the least of his worries. He even jokes with her that his scar makes him look cool too. He does a good job of lightening the mood and helping Sarada to stop feeling bad. He obviously cares about her and doesn't want her beating herself up over what's happened. A nice little bonding moment between the two. Their little heart-to-heart ends when Boruto starts telling Sarada about Code's plan to kidnap her from the last chapter. He wants to give her to the Shinju so they can lure Boruto to them. He also reveals here that Code left claw marks all around the village using Mamushi's clones to do so. It makes sense that he was able to pull this off since Mamushi was not in his proper state of mind. His intelligence drops as the number of his clones increases. For the majority of that fight he was operating on pure instinct, a perfect opportunity for Code to sneakily use him. He didn't even have to show himself completely since each of the Shinju are basically walking claw marks for him. Boruto tells us that even Kawaki, with all the help he can get, would have a hard time finding all of the claw marks. Code can now enter and eavesdrop on Konoha at will, which is quite dangerous. It's easy to forget, but Code is still much stronger than Jigen, meaning there are very few people in Konoha who are capable of beating him. He could wreak a lot of havoc right now if he wanted to, which is disturbing to think about. After warning Sarada, Boruto proposes a shocking idea. He tells her to let Code capture her. Sarada is certainly able to beat him with her Okurume, but Boruto doesn't want her to do that. He gives her 2 of his flying rising markers and tells her he'll teleport to her the second Code takes her to the Shinju base, which is his likely destination after kidnapping her. Even if that's not where Code takes her though, Boruto will still be able to warp to her in a timely manner as long as she drops the markers on the floor wherever they go. It's that line that stands out to me. This is already a highly risky plan. In the worst case scenario, Boruto and Sarada will be faced with Code, Hidari, and Juro. The fact that Boruto is reminding us of the weakness of his jutsu before they even get started feels like foreshadowing for something to go wrong, which is quite disturbing. Boruto's objective is likely to recruit Code, an idea that was given to him last chapter, but is this really the best way to go about it? After that scene, we're back in the Ten Tails dimension with Juro and Hidari. Juro's asking Hidari about the book he seems to be reading a lot. Hidari says he's mainly gazing at the book rather than reading it, and then shows it to Juro. It's a book full of cat pictures, both funny and unexpected. I expected Hidari was mainly reading stories rather than looking at pictures. He asks Juro what he's getting out of the book, but Juro says that without words there isn't anything to get from the book. Hidari then asks him if he finds the cats in the book cute, causing Juro to take a second look at the book. Between these two, we're seeing 2 different styles of reading. Juro is mainly focused on learning things from the books he reads, while Hidari takes the time to appreciate the little things like the cuteness of the illustrations. Those are interesting details we're showing about these 2 characters, but what I think stands out more here is the fact that Hidari chose to gaze at a book of cats. It's easy to forget this because not only was it long ago in the series, but it was also brief. Sasuke, the person whose chakra Hidari was made with, had a connection to cats, specifically ninja cats. The Uchiha clan used to get weapons and other supplies from them, and Sasuke and Itachi have known them since they were children. So it's really interesting that this is the kind of book that Hidari would be spending a lot of time gazing at. The book might be doing more to him than even he realizes. Before the chapter ends, we're brought back to Konoha one last time. Amado is seen looking for Inojin in the village and manages to find and meet with him. Right off the bat, I was suspicious. It's already disturbing to see Amado leave his lab and be seen in broad daylight, likely because he never does it. And if I remember correctly, the last time he did do it, he threatened to blow Shigadai's brains out. There's also the fact that his glasses are doing that glare thing the entire time he's talking to Inojin, which is actually a nice detail. It keeps him looking shady the whole time, which is quite fitting. So anyway, Amado gives Inojin a scroll, claiming it contains data from the Mamushi battle. He wants him to give it to Kashi and Koji. Inojin suggests giving it to Boruto instead of him, since it'll likely get to Koji faster. Makes sense, right? But of course, the suspicious Amado insists that Inojin specifically be the one to give Koji the scroll, claiming only Koji would understand the significance of its contents right away. Inojin agrees, and Amado leaves. Inojin asks Koji, whose toad had been staying on him, what's supposed to happen next, expecting him to have already foreseen this event, but Koji reveals that he's never actually seen this before. He never got an update since the last time his prescience activated, so for the first time in a while, he's in the dark, and is pretty vulnerable. This did have me wondering whether Koji's Shinjutsu shares the same weakness as Momoshiki's future sight, in that he can't foresee anything happening to him specifically, despite being able to see what happens to others. So far I don't actually remember if he ever had any visions concerning him specifically, but back to the present. Koji decides to still take the scroll, but he says he won't open it until his next update. Cautious, but not cautious enough, as he still summons the scroll to his location, something I still can't believe. Amado is the kind of guy who will make contingency plans for his contingency plans. Koji should know this as they've worked together for a long time, and Amado left him for Ishiki to dispose of. Koji should have known better than to trust him even slightly. He should have had that scroll buried somewhere outside Konoha until he got his update. I knew whatever Amado had planned did not require Koji to open the scroll, only to get it near him. I figured the scroll was some kind of a tracker, but it ended up being much worse. After Koji picks up the scroll, Kawaki, who shrank himself, jumps out of the tassel of the scroll, reveals Amado's toad to Koji, and once Koji looks into its eyes, Amado speaks his shutdown code to put Koji to sleep. The same code Koji suspected him of having when he put Delta to sleep back in part 1. It was disappointing to see Koji fall for this, but I still found it cool and kind of poetic that this ambush was almost identical to the way Koji had Inojin take over Kobu's body with the mind transfer jutsu during the Mamushi fight. Karma sucks, doesn't it? Credit where it's due though, this was still a brilliant plan by Amado. Having Kawaki hide in a tassel was a genius use of Sukuna Hikona. It explains why Amado didn't want Boruto involved, as he would have sensed Kawaki and realized what was happening. It's true that when Kawaki shrinks, it's harder for Boruto to track him, but Boruto would have still sensed him in the vicinity and is smart enough to figure out that he's likely somewhere on the scroll. Not to mention he could have also inspected the scroll with his Byakugan. Regardless, the entire plan was a perfect example of top-tier ninja deception, which is ironic considering neither of the two who launched it are actually shinobi. The question now is what Amado plans on doing with Koji. He told Kawaki that helping him get Koji was urgent, meaning he's probably got some big plan in the works. I would think that after the Mamushi fight, where he had a direct mind transmission linked to Koji for a while, he would see how big of an asset Koji is with his new ability, as well as how much they'll need him in the coming battles. There's also the question of how long it'll take Boruto to realize what's happened. I don't imagine it would take too long, since Inojin should notice that Koji's toad, which should still be on his neck, has become unresponsive. It'll be more obvious if it suddenly vanishes. When Koji first realized that Amado set him up against Ishiki, I looked forward to seeing them meet again, since I was sure Koji might want to get even with Amado. But after the time skip, Koji implied that he didn't hold any grudge against him, that he was satisfied he fulfilled his role. After that, the idea of their future reunion wasn't as exciting, so it left my mind. Now, it's suddenly happening sooner than I expected, and the timing is pretty bad for the heroes, which only raises the stakes, so it works from a storytelling perspective. This chapter was disturbing, but in a good way. A lot is being set up, and so much can go wrong.